Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very special live chat with Laura Caldwell, author of The Dog Park. Laura, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, and Schaefer.
Hi, Schaefer. Adorable. So before we start the questions and answers, we have a lot of exciting news for our viewers. BookTrib and Bookshow have a great offer for the ebook version of The Dog Park. Special pricing is good for a limited time and available only to those watching today's live chat. So you can redeem your promotional offer for The Dog Park on the web at booktrib.com on your smartphone or on your tablet. You can also text BookTrib to 67076 for a direct link, so make sure to check that out afterwards. And in celebration of Laura's new release, we're also giving away WAG swag bags that include a copy of The Dog Park, and we have some great goodies from Barking Mad Baking Company, Waggy Wear, New York Dog Shop, and Bitch New York.
Nice.
All great companies. Yeah. So stop by BookTrib after the live chat and leave us a comment on the live chat page for the dog park with your funniest dog story, and you can win a WAG swag bag. Okay, so Laura, before we begin, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and the dog park?
Yeah, I'm a Chicago lawyer, and also an author. And mostly in the last 10 years or so, I've been writing mysteries and also working on some nonfiction that involves some of my clients who are exonerees, people who were in jail, innocent, and who are then released. And I had one more book planned in a mystery series featuring this character, Izzy McNeil, who's a sassy redhead Chicago lawyer who's like cooler than me, smarter than me, taller, the whole thing. And I'm about to start another book about her when I got a dog, and my publisher and agent started making fun of me because my social media pages had gone from, books and exonerees and books and innocence and books, and then it was like books and dogs and dogs and dogs and Schaefer and Schaefer and Schaefer, and I'm admittedly obsessed. So we just decided, why not put you out of your misery, Laura, was kind of what they said, and you probably have and they really, my publisher was like, we want great characters, and one of them should be a dog, but the dog shouldn't overtake the book, So it's the dog park is about a couple who shares joint custody of their mini golden doodle named Baxter. And when Baxter is in a video that goes viral, he actually saves a kid from being hit on the street, and it's caught on video. And as we all know these days, you can be unknown at breakfast and trending on the nightly news at 6. And that's kind of what happens for them. Their dog becomes famous, throws this couple back together, and causes all these secrets that they actually didn't know about each other to sort of flare up. Because I couldn't really totally lose my mystery thing. So, of course, it had to involve some buried secrets.
Excellent. We have a really fun question from Jess, one of our viewers. She says, name 3 random things about you.
Name 3 random things about you. Well, I was a cheerleader at the University of Iowa when I was in college. And we competed on ESPN. So in some ways we were very serious. But most of us just love sports, and we just wanted to be able to sit on the football field and sit on the basketball court. So, and actually one of my best friends from cheerleading is Amy Schaefer, and that's who I named my dog after she changed her name when she got married. Someone had to keep up the tradition of a beautiful, raunchy, blonde, like if Schaefer's coming to town, pack an extra pair of socks because you might not be back for a few days. So that's one random thing, is my cheerleading at the University of Iowa, which has led to many good things. Random things. Another one would be that, I like skydiving.
I've gone too. It's awesome.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how many times have you gone?
I've only gone once.
Okay, I've gone 5 times, a couple times in California, once in Australia, and a few times in Illinois. And I really want to go again, like next week. So if anybody is in the Illinois area and is interested in meeting me at the Ottawa Skydive Chicago, let me know.
Ready to jump.
I'm ready. So that would be another random thing. And then, well, I guess if I had to say a random thing is I don't crave sweets, I crave popcorn. Like my last meal would be popcorn if asked. If I had to pick a last meal, it was one food. I love popcorn.
Salty.
Are those random? Do you feel like you get better random answers from other authors?
No, I love those.
Okay, good.
Those were good. So let's see. Oh, we have a question about the cover from Hannah. She says, "Did you pick the cover for the book? It's so refreshing, and I just love it."
I love that cover too. The dog part. Do we have a copy of it? We should do some. Can you grab me?
We have one right here.
Some product placement. I love this dog part cover. It is. Thank you. It is just. I think it looks like a movie poster, doesn't it? It looks like it could be a poster for a movie. And I just think it captures the whole thing. I really wanted my own dog to be on it, but they nixed me on that. And so there's another cute, adorable, I think a little bit bigger than Baxter in the book, actually, golden doodle on the cover. And I just think it kind of conveys, I don't know, something is clearly on the horizon for this couple on the cover, and they're sitting apart, and they almost don't think that their horizon will, mean the two of them at all. And yet the dog is sitting in between them as if he sort of knows better.
Very wise doggy.
I know.
For sure. So let's see. Hannah also has a question about kind of your writing process. She says, "Do you have an outline or a storyboard? Can you give someone tips about writing a novel?"
I storyboard, but in a very rudimentary sort of way. I've tried there are lots of different, there's different software you can use now, so many different apps that you can use to plot sort of a book, and I have gone back to one thing only works for me, and I take a board, usually it's like the back of one of my book covers, and I take the board and just turn it over so it's a blank sheet about maybe 24 inches high, 12 inches wide, and I make myself put a tiny little Post-it note. Sometimes I just rip little Post-it notes in half, one per chapter. So a writing teacher, Jerry Cleaver, who passed recently, told me that it was imperative, whether you were writing a quiet family novel or a thriller, you still had to have every chapter mean something and push the story forward. It can't just be you went to a party and we sort of talked to them. So in the dog park, for example, I would put a little tiny thing that just said one, and I would say they dropped the dog off. Prickly conversation. Like, you give yourself maybe 10 words at most, and you have to write really tiny. And then I can look at it later, though, and I can see, oh yeah, that sort of falls into a part 1, 2, and 3, or this maybe lends itself to a different structure. I can move this around. So it's so silly and basic, and I'm basically walking around like town with a plastic bag with this storyboard in it half the time. I need to get something more elegant, but I have found that's the only thing that works for me if I can see it all at once.
Yeah, so you're a visual writer. Let's see what is next. I want another doggy question. So I'm through here.
Taking a nap.
Oh, you mentioned the one earlier about your dog's personality and yours.
Yeah, I mean,
do you have any similar personality traits?
Well, we do. We both sort of like to talk to people on the street, and both kind of like to involve other people. So it's sort of random. We have a hard time getting around town now, just because I've such great neighbors in Chicago and such amazing people that half the time you're standing at a street corner, and people in Chicago pride themselves on being tough, but they also pride themselves on being mostly nice. And especially to others. Yeah. And Schaefer totally has that. She's like a true Chicago dog.
That's amazing. Let's see. Hannah has a question. She said you jumped from mystery and thriller to a contemporary romance. So she wants to know what sparked that change.
Well, technically, I mean, I started out writing when before this sort of chick lit genre, which was a sort of big literary genre that followed Sex and the City and also the publication of Bridget Jones's Diary in the UK. And that created a market and a media for novels featuring young women. And, sort of an overlooked subsect, but which was a big reading population. But when I first started writing, I wrote a book called Burning the Map. And it was about a girlfriend's trip to Rome and Greece, and the trip changes someone's entire life. I didn't write it for a genre. I don't even think I thought about my reader at the time. I just thought maybe it would be a good story. And as I shopped it around, I finally got picked up by Red Dress Inc., which was the first publishing house to focus an imprint, to focus on the chick lit genre. Well, soon, though, others followed, and sort of lots of people got in this genre, and there became copycats, sort of like there was mommy lit, and there was like religious, pilot lit, and it became this like hated term, and people started pointing out, you know what, when you write a book about maybe it's a quiet novel about a normal person in a town with a normal relationship, and something maybe a little extraordinary happens to her, and they have to call it chick lit. But if Jonathan Franzen and Tom Perrotta, and I'm in no way, shape, or form comparing myself to them, my apologies. But if they wrote it, they'd get a Pulitzer. So this was sort of the argument that was being thrown out there, and pretty soon it was a much maligned genre. I don't think there's any reason to sort of get up in arms about it. I never really cared what people called my work in particular. I just knew that it got me on the front tables of Barnes and Noble, and I felt really grateful. But I was moving into mystery when that genre was sort of going out, so it was just this natural progression. But when we thought about writing this book, The Dog Park, it was like something that I wanted to tap into that again. Not necessarily, I wasn't any longer with someone in her 20s. Now it was someone in her 30s, post-divorce, who's, starting over in life. And it was kind of natural then to kind of go back to those roots, so to speak, even though I'm not allowed to call it chick lit. Sorry. Apologies to mine.
People are very particular about that. So Mac has a question. Are there any authors that have contributed to your writing style?
Well, absolutely. I mean, that's been one of the most wonderful things about being a published author, is that I have just found other authors to be so lovely as you start to, meet people. So when I was writing sort of romantic comedies and women's fiction before, there were all these amazing women writing at the same time who I met through that that genre. And that was people like Stacey Bayless and Sarah Mlynowski and just Linda Kernan, a lot of just really cool, fun women. And in fact, it was meeting them, they eventually said to me, we just don't understand, why are you a lawyer, but you don't write about anything remotely legal? And why are you a redhead, and yet all the redheads in your books are like slutty or dead by the end of the book? So first they suggested a psychologist, and then they said, why aren't you writing about something like that? I mean, literally, I was with Linda Kernan and Sarah Mlynowski at a diner in New York, and we sort of hatched out the bones of this mystery series, which would have Izzy McNeil, and it would have this redhead Chicago lawyer who, on the first, she's an entertainment lawyer, and on the first, page one, she, her fiance disappears 2 months before their wedding, and her biggest client is killed. And so then I still have this cool kind of young character who gets put to the test. And it was amazing. The first one was Red Hot Lies. In fact, we put 3 of them out in one summer. That was a crazy writing year. So we put out Red Hot Lies, Red Blooded Murder, and Red, White, and Dead. And then we put out another trilogy. So, but writing mysteries, because these ladies, these cool authors, led me to mystery, it led me to all these amazing mystery writers. And I think they have, you learn from them, you meet them. I'm Marcus Sakey and Sean Shurcover and Tasha Alexander and people like that. I just love and adore them. And so then you read their book because you're curious, and then you can actually ask them, hey, how do you think you pulled that off?
Amazing.
Marcus Sakey starts a book with a guy in a car on a shore, and he doesn't know who he is, and I can't, it was the craziest beginning, and I just was so curious to how did you get right into that? How did you find that place? And then it was amazing because I got to ask him. And, it's strange. I never thought about this. Good question. But it was really those mystery writers who then kind of encouraged me to write the one book I have that's nonfiction, which is Long Way Home. And it's about a murder trial that I worked on here in Chicago, where a young man was in a holding cell in Cook County for 6 years without a trial after being charged with death penalty murder. And I had this case, and they sort of supported me through it. And then when I started thinking about writing and talking to my client Jovan about, do you want to write about this? It was really them who I turned to and who read a lot of my first drafts. So I guess I'm fortunate to say that the authors who have influenced me are people I know, which is pretty nice now that I summarize it like that.
That's amazing. Let's see. Grace, she said, you've written a dozen books, and I know this is hard to answer, but do you have one that's extra close to your heart?
15 books to be exact. That sort of stunned even me. I was like, how did that happen? And of course, it's like children. You love them all equally. I mean, I'm attached to the dog park right now because I'm so attached to my dog. She's 2.5, and I'm, and so this one has just been near and dear to my heart, and just such a fun thing to write, because just writing about people who had been in jail who are innocent, working with people, and the most amazing, inspiring people you could ever meet. I mean, they're my, celebrities. But it's intense, and, writing mysteries is, you cannot slow down. So writing them feels like that, and the plot, ramps up sort of like that. And so writing The Dog Park, I guess that's probably my favorite right now, really, not just because I'm talking to you about it, but it was just such a return to that, feeling I had where I just wanted to write because I was just so inspired by something I was seeing, And so that's probably my favorite. But other than that, I like The Rome Affair, which was another trip to Italy that leads to blackmail and murder this time. Instead of fun and sunshine, which was burning the map, this was kind of got sinister pretty fast. But that, I was working on that book when I called this attorney, Catherine O'Daniel, and I'd met her once or twice, and I said, I have a research question for a book. I have this woman, she went to Italy with her friend, she returns, someone goes over the balcony at their house, and she and her husband are arrested for the death of this person. And they have him down the hall, and they're trying to, they're going to the husband, and they're saying, your wife is saying about you? Yeah, let me tell you. She's down the hall, and then they'd go to the husband, but I was totally channeling Law and Order. I mean, I had never done criminal work at all. And I realized, I think all of us have read a book where you sense that the author is maybe writing about a doctor, but I don't know if she knows that doctors don't do X or Y. Do you know what I mean? I was starting to feel like that. Like I didn't think it would be a big part in the book, but I thought I should have authority to write with it so that you knew that the author had the knowledge. And so I called this woman, Kathy, who's now one of my best friends, and said, how does this happen? Do they ever force someone into confessing? And I wasn't really interested in having that be a part of the book, but I think everyone who's, the first once or twice that you hear that someone was coerced into confessing to something they didn't do, you're sort of like, how does that happen? And so I was just more just curious, and she told me about Jovan Mosley, and she said, I met this kid in the jail, he helped me out, and I found out that he had been in jail for almost 6 years, and there was no trial date on the books, and it's my first pro bono case. I'm doing it for free. It's the first one I'm doing. And I was just so taken by that, and I just offered to help her write any motions or anything that I was teaching law school at this time, mostly just writing novels. I'd sort of left the litigation world, unfortunately, behind. But this just completely overtook me, and just became really impressed by this woman, Catherine, and the amount of time it takes to properly try a murder case is a lot. So I just kept offering to help her in little bits, and she eventually would introduce me to Jovan and ask me to try the case with her. So that's a long answer of saying that's why the Rome affair is so kind of near and dear. I mean, when we were trying this murder case, I literally was on a deadline for that book. So the judge would go in chambers, and I'd be sitting in people would go off to lunch, and I'd be sitting in this empty courtroom where my character, who's now charged with murder, is in the same courtroom. And it was the weirdest thing. It was like I conjured it up. But it was just, an amazing sort of journey. And so that's why I think the Rome affair is kind of... Plus, it's just a really good mystery, let's face it.
Great answer. We have another doggy question. Let me see, where did that go? Oh, Jen said, what's the worst trouble your dog has ever gotten into around the house, and were you mad?
Well, 2 days ago, I was with my assistant and her dog in the park, and Schaefer rolled in a dead bird and followed that up with a dead rat. Just like a good, oh, yes. Oh, this smells so good. And it's the only time I hear myself do that crazy, Schaefer! And, where people, turn to, look at that lady yelling at her dog. So literally now I've hooked up with a mobile groomer, Bark of the Town, plug, love them. And I literally call them, and they pull up in front of the house, because she does this all the time. She's the most obedient dog, but for dead things in a park. So she's in trouble a fair amount, but only for that.
They can't.
I've heard numerous theories on this. I've heard that the I need a vet or a dog psychologist or whatever to tell me, but some people have told me that they roll in dead things because it wards off attackers, because they'll think that they're also dead. And then, but the vet said to me last week, I just think they think it smells good. Simple as that.
Yeah. Oh, that's too funny. Lydia has a question. She says, what has been the response to the dog park from friends and family, and do they read all of your books?
Yes, and I've been lucky to have my family work on books with me, and my mom's working on, just worked with me on an audiobook for the dog park, actually, that comes out August 26th is the drop date for the audiobook, and we have this amazing narrator, Therese Plummer, who
cool.
My mother is one of those, almost all she reads is audio. She was like those books on tape, and she would wait for them from the library. She graduated to books on CD, but she's got one in her car, she's got one on her headphones. And so I've long known about audiobooks, and then was able to work with Audible to do the Izzy books. And then I decided to produce the dog park on my own. So I called in the expert, Margaret Caldwell, and we've been working on that. And she brought me Therese Plummer because she was a favorite. I just loved her. And I thought she was just kind of trying to push her her stuff in. I'm like, Mom, you can't just say because you like her. It has to be right for the book. So we had reached out to two narrators and where they were auditioning by reading the first chapter, and we reached out to Therese, and I heard it, and immediately my book sounded just 10 times more amazing than I could have imagined. I was like, oh my gosh. And it's so neat because you can step out of your own head, because they kind of tend to put different inflections, like they're inhabiting this character, and it's so cool because then it kind of allows you to just step aside.
Yeah. Awesome. I have good audiobook memories of listening to Bossy Pants by Tina Fey.
Oh yes.
And laughing. So funny.
Hard work, those audiobooks.
Someone asked, yeah, I bet. Someone asked about, let's see, do you listen to music when you write or eat a particular snack to get the creative juices flowing?
My first book, Burning the Map, I listened over and over and over and over to this symphonic Rolling Stones album. So it was a symphony playing the Rolling Stones. And I would get up early I was practicing law at the time, so, I would need to be in around 9, so I'd get up at 5:30, sit down at 6 for a couple hours, and you'd think this thing would put me to sleep, but for some reason it had this oddly energetic effect on me, and it was sort of moody, and you'd be like, what is this? Oh yes, satisfaction. But it had this weird creative energy to it. And so I was kind of more, I think I was a little superstitious. And so then I felt like it was working. So, I became like that person who's not washing his jersey or whatever, because it's the lucky one.
Kenna wants to know, were there any other working titles before you went with the dog park, or was that kind of always the title?
Well, thank you for asking. I wanted to call it I'd Rather Sleep with a Dog. And thank you. I thought it was funny too. I thought it was hilarious, actually. And everyone I would say it to would laugh, but then people would point out that might be a weird translation, and I said, well, they'll just make it something else. If it sells in Greece or something, then we'll change it. And then someone else pointed out, I think that could lead to just really weird website comments. I don't think you want to get into that. So I was reluctantly talked off of that one. And I love the dog park. I can't believe I didn't come on it sooner. I think it's perfect.
Brenna wants to know, from conception to a finished product, how long did it take you to write the book?
In a perfect world, 2 years. When I got on book contract and was fortunate enough to keep publishing, they encourage you to try to do a book a year. Keep your readers, interested in coming back and remember you. So I was doing that for a while, but in a perfect world, 2 years where you start, it always starts for me with two strange concepts. In the dog park, isn't that interesting on one hand that you can be famous by the end of the day? It's a video that you might not even take it. Likely you might not take it. And so I was just sort of noodling over that. And then, of course, on the other hand, I'm obsessed with my dog. And then I was thinking, gosh, what do people do when they have to share custody? And I talked to a couple lawyers, and they said that's actually getting included in a lot of marital settlement agreements now, and it's actually kind of complicated legally. But so it was sort of just plotting those two things and then starting them was kind of just, that's how it always starts for me.
Right. We have a question from Lisa Ray. She said, is this your first time having a dog?
Well, I grew up with like standard poodles, one
Mm,
orange, one black, one white, and then just kind of hadn't thought about it for years because I live in Chicago, and I noticed that it became more and more and more and more dog friendly, but it
yeah.
still seemed kind of a crazy undertaking. So I've thought about it long and hard and just like read every book out there and talked to every person. And now it just seems it's sort of like when you hit on the title, the dog park, you're like, why didn't we have that title earlier?
Yeah.
And it's kind of like that with a dog now. I'm like, I can't believe I didn't do this before.
You survive without a dog. Yeah, right?
I know the love of a dog.
Um, so we're coming to the last question. Tell us about your next project. Is it dog centric or is it something totally different?
Tell us about your next project. It is a anthology called Anatomy of
Oh,
Innocence. So I'm working on it with Les Klinger, who's a great annotator and anthologist, and we are so it'll be called Anatomy of Innocence, and it'll benefit Life After Innocence, the group that I work with at Loyola Law School. So there, the law students work with people who've been exonerated. They were innocent, they were in prison, and they were released. We don't do the hard work. People like Northwestern and University
yeah,
of Chicago and the Illinois Innocence Project do that, but Loyola will help them start over and try to get their record expunged or help them find a job, that kind of thing. And but as I've been, for the last 5 years working in this innocence world and talking about it and just asking a lot of questions because it's really fascinating about how many people in jail are, probably likely statistically innocent. And then what do you do when you start over? But the question people always ask me is, I know it happens. Like I've seen enough newspapers and I know wrongful convictions happen. We're not getting it right 100% of the time. But people always say, like, how did it happen? Why did it
yeah.
happen? I don't get it. So what we're going to do is pair a thriller writer with an exoneree,
Mhm.
someone who's been exonerated, and chapter by chapter tell the story of how wrongful convictions happen. How do innocent people get arrested, interrogated, tried? There's a terrible moment when you hear the word guilty and you cannot, like, your mind and body cannot believe it, and it's horrible for your family. And so although the clients we work with are so unique and their cases so different, there are
Yeah.
threads of the wrongful conviction story that you hear, of this innocent story. There are similar threads to it. So we're going to take a great writer like Lee Child and pair him with an exoneree like Antoine Day, and they'll tell the chapter of
Wow.
Antoine's arrest. And we'll pair someone like Michael Harvey with Jerry Miller, and they'll tell the first year in prison. So all the chapters of how wrongful conviction happens will be in there, written by thriller writers who are just masters of the criminal legal
Yeah.
world anyway, and they know how to tell a story. And these
Yeah.
exonerees who are just superstars. So it's called Anatomy of Innocence, and it will be out in 2016.
That sounds brilliant. Can't wait to read it.
Me too. I know. I'm beyond excited. It's the most amazing project.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, it's so great to have you on our live chat today. It was a
Thank
fantastic
you
ending.
so much for having
Yeah,
me. Good
absolutely.
job.
And thank you. I just wanted to
Mm.
remind everybody about BookTrib and Bookshout's promotion, so check that out afterwards. And also, you can enter to win a doggy wag swag bag. So thank you so much, Laura.
Thank
Have a
you.
great
Good to
day.
see you. Bye.
Bye. Bye.